joined by my unofficial co-host of this show, Elsa, who's here to greet you all as well. We are so glad that you made it here and that you are joining us today. Maybe it's your lunch hour, maybe you're taking a break from work or the chores of the day, but we are glad that you are here for a little peace, hopefully some hope, and just to be. We started this show in May of last year as really an opportunity and a chance for us to interview experts, clinicians, advocates, authors, speakers, just a wide variety of people from all over the field of mental health, and get their insight and wisdom, but also bring that to you and give you the opportunity to ask them questions, to share your story. And of course, this is a Facebook Live, so that means you can comment at any time. And we want to, and always try to make this as conversational as possible. So that means that throughout, I'll keep asking you, hey guys, pipe in with questions, or shoot us a note in the comments, tell us your name, let us know where you're signing in from, because we just really love to hear from you. And we've had some shows where we have a guest and we get some really fabulous questions, and this conversation just takes an amazing turn down a road that I never had planned, that we never had discussed before. So we always really cherish the times when you can share and bring up something that's on your heart, because also maybe what's on your heart is on someone else's as well, and they might not have the courage to ask it. So that's just my little PSA to say, do not be shy. We want to hear from you. So sign in, say hello, let us know where you're signing in from. And as I mentioned every week, it's really cool because I'm sitting here in Zurich, Switzerland, and our guest today is joining us from Minnesota, and we have guests from all over the world, and we usually have people who sign in from all over the globe. So it's always exciting that when you let us know where you're signing in from, because we just we see the Eating Disorder Hope family just growing and expanding all the time, and we really cherish that. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest and our topic for this week. So this week we are going to take a little different path, and as you know, this is the Eating Disorder Hope Facebook page. We also have a sister site called Addiction Hope, and basically the same mission and vision that Eating Disorder Hope has, and it's to provide education and resources and connection to treatment for people, in this case, struggling with all different kinds of addictions and other mental health issues. And if you have been in the recovery field for a while, if you're someone who's struggled, or if you're a family member, a friend, a parent, whatever it may be, I'm sure it's not news to you that people who struggle with eating disorders often have what we call comorbidities. And that's essentially other things that they struggle with as well. It could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be obsessive compulsive disorder, it could be substance abuse, it could be alcohol addiction, it could be depression. I mean, there's a lot of different comorbidities. Trauma, PTSD is a huge one. Anyway, these illnesses and these issues, they don't exist in a vacuum. It's not that just one person has this diagnosis and one person has this diagnosis. Oftentimes, people have many, or people recover from one thing and years later they go on to struggle with addiction or some other mental health issue. So we want to be a place that recognizes that, the diversity of the struggle, and shine a light on that. And so we are not here today just talking about eating disorders. We're going to hear from a mom and an author, an incredible, inspiring woman who has a very powerful story supporting a loved one who is struggling with addiction. But I know that no matter where you are on the spectrum of recovery or supporting someone, that you will find this incredibly meaningful. She has a lot of wisdom to share, and I know that whatever it is that you might be going through or struggling with, that you will definitely be able to relate to our next guest. So I'm going to invite her on, and there we have on the other side of the screen, Sandy Swenson, who is joining us. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Kirsten. Nice to see you.
It's so great to have you. And before we jump into our conversation, I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio to introduce you to our viewers here. Sandy, got to get the arrow pointing the right way. There we go. Sandy is the mother of two sons, one of whom struggles with addiction. She is the author of The Joey Song, A Mother's Story of Her Son's Addiction, which was published in 2014. Tending Dandelions, Honest Meditations for Mothers with Addicted Children in 2017. And she also has a Readings for Moms of Addicts app, which is available on the Google Play as well as the Apple App Store. Sandy lives in a place where love and addiction meet. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Sandy is a voice for parents of children suffering from the disease of addiction, putting their thoughts and feelings into words. And she is a very inspirational woman and a courageous warrior. And we're very, very glad to welcome her. So that's a little bit about our guest. So Sandy, first of all, so you're joining us from Minnesota, correct?
Yes, I am.
Absolutely. Good Midwest girl. I think I shared with you in one of our talks that I'm from Michigan originally. Yeah. So it's nice to be chatting with someone from the Midwest here. So first of all, why don't you tell us, I know you have a very personal journey and a personal reason for your getting into this field and becoming an author. Why don't you share a little bit about, what motivated you to start to be open with your story and start to write these books?
Well, our journey started back maybe in 2006, 2005. It's hard to know exactly when addiction started because we were in denial and we didn't know what we were seeing. But once it became apparent that my son was struggling with addiction, I did everything I could to fix this for him, everything that I could think of to fix this for him. And I went to meetings and I read books and I tried to understand addiction, and I felt like I was doing everything that I could. I loved him so much, and yet all the books and everything that I had read were written by people who had a success story to tell. Their child made it through to the other side and a happy ending. And that wasn't the case in our story. My son continued to struggle with addiction, and I felt like a failure for having not been able to fix this for him, and maybe my love wasn't strong enough to fix this. But then, of course, I realized that I couldn't possibly have loved him anymore. And yet the addiction still continued. And I knew that there were a lot of people out there living in the exact same place, this place where love and addiction meet, and feeling the same way as I was. So when I wrote The Joey Song, it was the book that I had wanted to read when I started out on this journey. The true, painful, hopeful, we have the power, even if we can't fix our child for them, we still have power. And the real honest truth is that doesn't always have a happy ending, but we can still make the best of this situation. We do have power, and we can change the way addiction is perceived. And so that's why I started writing The Joey Song.
Yeah. What were some of the first signs and symptoms? Because I know it's so, and I know for parents of those who struggle with any of these things, it can be so hard because parents love and do support their children and they want to think the best of them. I know it was definitely the situation in my family that I was a really good kid. I was a high achiever, as is often the case in these situations. Not always. We don't want to paint with a broad brush for sure. But what were some of, and there can be like, oh, it's not my kid. It's not my kid. And there can be this hesitation. What was it for you, kind of like the real spark that said, okay, this is a real problem as a parent, as parents, we have to face this?
Well, actually, when this all started, when we even started to have an inkling that we were not just having teenage troubles, but something else was going on. We happened to live in India. My husband was working over there and we were living over there. And my son was also a very high achiever and Eagle Scout and scholarships to several colleges. And I was a stay-at-home mom. And we started getting reports from some of the teachers that his behavior was changing. And somebody mentioned drugs. And I was, there's no way my son is doing drugs. It just couldn't happen. I was on top of everything. It couldn't happen. It couldn't not happen. So living in India, he had lost a lot of weight. And coincidentally, we thought we jumped to eating disorder. We thought he had an eating disorder. And so we actually took him back to the United States, and I stayed with him there for a couple of months while he went to an eating disorder clinic. In retrospect, I think that it was not that. And it was addiction then, but we were just chasing the wrong issue, and he wasn't going to tell us what the real issue was. But that was the beginning. But then we thought that he was all cured, done and done, graduated from high school. We all moved back to the United States. We still didn't know we had a problem. We thought we had addressed it. It was done. It was over. And then he was on his way out to college and got arrested. And then he tried to commit suicide and the first couple of weeks of school. And then he came back home. We still didn't know at that point it was a drug issue until he returned back home and he was around. But within weeks, we knew with the lying and his violent behavior, and he was just becoming a different person.
Yeah. Can you describe what that felt like for you as a mother? Because I would imagine, of course, you want to see your child be well. And especially if you pour so much time and money, let's not forget treatment is expensive, right? It's a huge commitment, an emotional commitment. How did that feel for you with that second kind of realization that, oh, it wasn't just fixed one time in treatment, like this is a whole another big deal. What was that like for you and also for your other family members, not just you, because, you know, these diseases affect entire families.
Oh yeah, it definitely affects the whole family. And, you know, when we realized after the eating disorder treatment that, oops, that wasn't probably the real issue at all. And then we got him into treatment the first time and the second time and the third time. But the first time, after the eating disorder treatment, then we took him had him go to addiction treatment. Truly believed at that point, oh, okay, we got him in. Thank goodness we were able to, you know, trick and connive and get him there. And so 30 days, we're going to be good to go. Really still believed that even after the eating disorder thing. So when I went to the first family program, I was sort of thinking I was doing this for him. And I showed up at the family program and realized, oh, okay, well, there's more to this than, you know, I have to do things too, which really didn't sink in at the moment, but it came back to me later, you know, that as he finished up his 30 days and recovery didn't stick, in time, I came to realize that I can still find recovery for myself, for my family, and so that someday, when he's ready to embrace recovery, there'll be something healthy for him to return to, because the rate we were going, we were just going to be an obliterated family. So the focus had to change, and the roller coaster of the in and out of the treatments and in and out of recovery. And it was tearing our family apart. And if I didn't take control of the part of the recovery that I could take control of, which was me, I was the one sucking our family down the drain, really. And I was pulling the whole family with me. That umbilical connection is powerful. And
I'm fascinated because I think, oh my goodness, what an incredibly strong woman. I just can't even imagine. And you say like my recovery, and you say I was sucking the whole family down. I find that so hard to believe, because I can't imagine what a mother would do in that situation. And you were just trying to get your child help. How did you come to that realization? And how long did it take too? Because these things last, obviously they can be years.
Oh, years. It did. It took years. I spent a lot of years crying and really spending a lot of time in bed and ashamed to tell anybody. It took years. Mm-hmm. But I could see that my family was crumbling, and I could see I was crumbling. And I knew that this was not the shame, the stigma, the guilt, me trying to fix him. Everything I was doing wasn't working. But I loved him so much. And so I knew the love wasn't the flaw.
Yeah, of course.
I knew that. So I knew that I needed to do something different. I couldn't necessarily make the situation I couldn't make this better because I can't fix it for him, but I certainly can make it so that it's not worse. And by me sucking the whole family down the drain, I was making it worse. So the destruction had to stop with me. You know, he may have been the one taking the poison, but it was slipping right in on that umbilical connection through me and taking down the whole family.
So what were some of the biggest lessons that you feel like you learned? I mean, I know that boundaries are a huge thing that we hear about all the time, which need to be in place, which, you know, I've heard from other parents that can be really hard to establish boundaries and some other things. You know, what worked for you to say when you made that decision, okay, I can only focus on what I can control, which is me. What, in fact, what was the catalyst for your change, and what changes did you make in that process?
Well, probably that I was a stalker. So my husband I stalked my son, and, you know, at his place on Facebook. You know, I Googled all over trying to find out his arrest records and everything. My husband would stand right at the door of the den when I was doing my Google work. He wouldn't come in, and he'd say, "This is so unhealthy, so unhealthy." But what's happening? So he could remove himself a little bit, but I couldn't remove myself until finally, when my son was in treatment once, I had to fess up to the counselors that I knew something about my son, and the way I knew it was because I still had his password for his email and everything, so I knew everything. So that was the point where I realized I'm sick. I have to stop being so involved in all of his business, and I stopped all of those things, and I wasn't healthy for me, wasn't healthy for my family, wasn't right for my son, who was an adult at this point, you know. That was hard, though. That was really, really, really hard to now not know, and to have to tell people, don't tell me, I don't want to know. I just don't want to know anymore. I can't do anything about it. So the worry, the fear, even that is enough for me to pull down my whole family. I had to just redirect, and that, I guess, is the thing. It was the redirecting. I had to do something with all of this, need to do something. And so I just sort of started to help other moms.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. I know so many mothers who, like yourself, and I spoke about my own mother, who has been a really amazing advocate as well for other parents and for eating disorder recovery. And I just want to say we got Roxanne here. She says thank you. Thanks, Roxanne, for tuning in. And Melissa, who says hello, ladies. Hi, Melissa. And I see we've gotten some new viewers on, so just want to say hello and welcome. I'm so glad you found us. Please let us know in the comments your name, tell us where you're signing in from, and if you have any questions for Sandy at any point, please feel free. Also want to let you know that I put some links in the comments to some articles about substance abuse and some co-occurring disorders for you if you want more information about this topic. I know that moms are just these incredible forces for good, right? Especially when their family has been touched by something, and they have this amazing ability to turn it around and to help other people, and which is exactly what you have done. How is that also, before we jump into the message of your books and what we all can do to decrease the stigma of mental health issues in our communities, how did writing and publishing these books help to heal you?
Oh my goodness. Well, the Joey song, I actually worked in that for years. And it was so cathartic because I first of all a friend told me, because I couldn't sleep at night, I'd be up roaming the house, fearing for my son's life. She said I should start a journal and just start writing down all my thoughts and feelings. I thought, well, I can't hurt. Well, it helped so much, because now I could let those feelings and thoughts go. Before, I had to hang on to everything because I had to worry about it because I needed to. And I needed to remember this lie and that lie and what happened, so I could piece everything together if need be. So I had to hang on to every single smidge of everything. Once I put it in writing, I really could let it go, because if I needed to go back to it, it was there. I did not need to keep stewing it all around. And it also helped so much just to really think things through instead of just having knee-jerk reactions and thoughts. And when I was writing, I really had to think things through and make sense of things. And it was so cathartic for me. And it made me look at things in a much more deep and meaningful way.
Yeah, and especially the second one, I would imagine, tending dandelions and, words that you give, honest meditations, as you say, for mothers. And I think it's so important, too, what you started out saying, that you read so many books that had happy endings, and most families are not necessarily in that position. What kind of hope do you offer with your words? Because, oh gosh, I was actually reading a really, really amazing quote by G.K. Chesterton earlier today, and it was saying that hope without a hopeless situation is not a virtue, right? The only way that we can really have hope is if we feel like we're in a hopeless situation. So how did you channel the, oh gosh, I don't have a happy ending, into providing hope for other mothers and families?
Well, I came to realize that, well, for one, the biggest thing maybe was the feeling of failure, that my love somehow wasn't enough. But once I came to understand, that addiction is a disease, and if in fact love could fix addiction, it would have long ago been eradicated. So,
yeah, amen. Yeah.
Once I could set that aside. Sorry, I forgot what the question was. I got sidetracked.
How do you provide hope for mothers, and especially obviously in your books, when there is no happy ending? What is the other hope that you offer?
Yeah. Well, so once I realized love wasn't the failure, that was not the failure, but I had to acknowledge that I couldn't fix this for him, moving my need to do something over. The hope now is, as helpless as I felt before, because it was impossible. I can't do this for him. But what I can do is we moms, we do have power. We have a lot of power, because we can change the way addiction is perceived. We can change the way addiction is believed. We have so much power. And in doing that, the message that we're sending to our children, we're sending them the message that addiction is a disease, not a disgrace. Once we stop hiding, once we stop treating it like it's something shameful, our children are also going to be looking at themselves, seeing themselves in a different light too, once we treat them differently. So there's so much hope out there, and it's already happening. Things are changing. Things are changing in the years since this began with my son. The stigma and the shame, yes, they're still there, but it's such a different world now. And I feel like each one of us has so much potential, each parent, but each mother in particular. I think of us as dandelions. We're all tattered and frazzled after, what we've been through, but we are strong and we're survivors. And like each one of us, when you imagine the dandelion puffs, each one of us has so much to scatter. Everybody we meet, everything we say, our attitudes, each one of us has so much power to change the way addiction is perceived.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get we've got some comments here. Shauna says, hello, Kirsten and Sandy, love and light from Ireland. Blessings. Thank you, Shauna, for writing in. And Kelly says, hi, Sandy. I've been following you since the Joey song came out. Thank you so much. It was you who helped me to separate the addict from my daughter. That was a real game changer for me in my recovery. Can you talk a little bit about that, what she's talking about separating the addict from her daughter specifically in that concept?
Yes. I came to understand that the addict and my child share the same shadow. And for so many years, I was butting heads with the addict, but it looked like my child, and we were fighting, and it was horrible and it was awful. And it took me a while to understand that I was not fighting my child. I was fighting the addict. the disease. The addict wants me to do things that are harmful for my child. And I came to understand that I need to honor my child, not the addict. And the addict may hate me. I don't care. It's my child that matters. My child is the one that I want to see live beyond tomorrow. My child is the one that I want to have be grateful one day that I did the right things for my child and not for the addict. And it helped me tremendously to separate the two.
Yeah. And I think that's such a helpful tip as well for, it's the exact same thing that we talk about with eating disorder recovery, separating the eating disorder from the person, because, you know, and that's not always obviously it's not the answer, but it helps hugely in conceptualizing and saying that my child is not the enemy, right? And even for those in recovery themselves, you know, once the person gets to a place where it's like, hey, I want to recover, but there's this presence, there's this voice, there's, you know, whatever you want, some people, you know, name it, that is not the healthy self, right? And sometimes you have to differentiate your identity from that. And if you're a loved one supporting someone, you have to differentiate their identity because, like you said, it's a disease. And Melissa said, this is so good. Melissa says, you're right, Sandy, we cannot do it for them. Plenty of shame is burdened on them. What people don't understand is that they want to talk about it without feeling like they have a communicable disease. Yeah, huge, the openness. And, you know, I love, and Cindy says love from South Carolina. Hi, Cindy. I'm curious, how has it been with you being so public about your story and your son? How has it been for your community, your other friends, you know, the community of people around you as you've started to kind of spread this light? Have people been supportive? What's the response been? I'm sure you've been an educator about these things. How has that been for you and your family?
Well, everybody's been tremendously supportive. Everybody in my family has been tremendously supportive. And all of my friends, really, the few people who have not been supportive, they don't matter because I know what's right. And so I can't waste my time on that. But almost everybody is very supportive, and not surprisingly, there were a whole lot of other people living the same thing as I was living, and none of us knew that one another were going through the same thing. So, you know, it was once the conversation was out, well, you know, so too is the possibility for a solution, and we can unite together, and together we're stronger. You know, when we're all hiding out in shame and guilt and sadness and fear alone, it's just devastation on top of devastation. But yeah, once we're talking about it, once we realize that, you know, this is a message of love. This isn't, and it's a disease, not a disgrace. I don't look at talking about my son's addiction as anything more than as if I was talking about the sniffles. Zero shame. I don't feel one smidge.
Yeah.
Just none.
Amazing.
None.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to acknowledge too that you did a lot of work to get to that place, right? Yeah. That it didn't happen overnight. And there was so much, as you talked about, like personal reflection involved, and that, you know, and hopefully people will be able to, and I'll put the link to all of Sandy's books in the comments so that you can go and check them out. That it takes a process, and it takes educating yourself and a learning experience and a lot of work to be able to get to that place. I'm going to go to your, is your website, Sandy, the best place to send people to order your books?
Sure. Well, through the website or Amazon.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to put Sandy's website here in the comments section so that you guys can go and check out her work as well as her videos. She's got awesome videos on there, and links to the books as well, so that you can check some of that out. I know that you mentioned, oh wait, this is, I would love to see if you can offer some words of encouragement. Tracy says, I'm finding myself enabling my son who's in prison now due to his addiction. I had been in a good place in my recovery before his sentencing. Now I feel like I'm having to start all over.
What's a real roller coaster? It's such a roller coaster. And part of our journey is when we see other people and we think, oh, they've got it all figured out. Look, she's all got it all together. Well, we don't. One day we're doing real good and the next day we have to start all over again. But every single time that we start over, we have all that history now behind us of all the success we have had and the things that we have learned. Mm-hmm. And it just takes less time usually to get back up on, get back into a better place. But I think it's important that people understand that we don't just like our children who suffer with addiction, it's not one just perfectly straight journey. We go back and forth, and if we don't feel like we're the great success that it appears everybody else is, well, they're doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing. They have their struggles too, and it is hard. It's very hard to ride this roller coaster, but we're stronger every single time.
Yeah, so important. What is your view on, I know you mentioned a little bit about stigma and how you've seen it change a lot since your son first started struggling. What would you like to see change even more? What would you like to be better in the way that we talk about mental health, illness? I mean, what is in your view like a real glaring problem still as it relates to stigma?
Well, I think that I think once people have somebody in their family with addiction, I think that the progress on the stigma has come so far that it's easier for us now to come to understand that more quickly. However, I think that the population in general does not necessarily see it as a disease. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. However, this is where the power comes in, because we as moms, if we're all hiding out in shame and treat addiction as though it's something that we can't talk about, how is the rest of the world going to believe it's a disease if we are still treating it like a disgrace? So we moms really do have the power, because when all of us start talking up about addiction, we have the power to change the way the whole world looks at addiction. We really do. We really do.
Yeah. And, another thing that I just thought about is that, I still think that there is, and tell me if you think this as well, because I'm sure you know much better than I do. I still feel like there's, especially when it comes to substance abuse, that there's still this view that like good families don't have these problems, or, there must be, or wealthy families don't have these problems, or, that like if you're a good family, people don't struggle with this kind of stuff. But that is just so false. It can happen to anyone at any time, of any race, religion, ethnicity, socioeconomic status. It does not matter. Like these things, they cross all boundaries, and goodness has nothing to do with it.
Nothing at all. And that's another reason why with each of us speaking up, we see that it's not just, that it can happen to everybody. Anybody and everybody. And we can see these families, and people know that family, and they know how, and they see then, but they can't know that if they're only seeing this on the news about people they don't know. It has to come, the mom power, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because people have to see that, oh, look, it happened in this family. It could happen to any family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the truth is, addiction can happen to anybody. Anybody who's ever had a drink, taken a pill for pain, smoked a joint, whatever it is, could happen to anybody. Once the Pandora's box is opened, even the smallest crack, it can happen to anybody. And I just read something recently that might be the current Surgeon General, he said that, he's heard enough about blaming the families. He said, well, he has a brother who's an addict, and yet, or sibling who's an addict, and yet he isn't one, and he turned out to be a surgeon general. So he thinks his parents did a pretty good job. So really, it doesn't have anything at all to do with that. Some people say, you know, there's the accidental addicts, you know, the ones who took a pill prescribed for pain and then, you know, became addicted that way. I think they're all addicts are accidental addicts. Nobody set out to become an addict. Nobody set out. It's an accidental thing that happens to everybody. I think that more appropriate would be to say the rest of us are accidental non-addicts.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
I mean, and what happened to me?
Yeah.
I'm blind and I'm not addicted. So that's not by my choice, just as addiction isn't my son's choice. It's just is.
Yeah, no, that's that's an excellent point. Melissa here says it takes hard work, love, patience, prayer, and faith. Yes, very, very true, Melissa. You're spot on. Last thing that I want to touch base with you here on, Sandy, is that you've got a retreat coming up that you are facilitating, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so that will be on June 14th through 16th, and that's at Hazelden's Dan Anderson Renewal Center in Center City, Minnesota. Gorgeous facility, and it's mom to mom, where love and addiction meet, and it's a weekend of growth and coming to terms with the power that we hold in loving a child with addiction. So
amazing. And what are those dates again? You said June
14th through 16th.
Okay, perfect. I put the link in the comments as well, everyone. So if you want to check that out, you can go to the link there. I'm just going to put the dates up here on the screen. Such a cool thing that you're doing. And I just love how you just don't quit. Like, you just don't give up, and everything's not perfect, and there's not necessarily a bow on the end of the story, but you're using what you can do and the power that you do have to be able to influence others.
Well, and everything I do, someday, some way, if other moms are out doing the same thing,
yeah,
all of us, some way, it's going to touch my son. It's going to touch my son. I may not be able to help him directly, but if all of us moms are out doing the same thing in our own way, that scattering of the dandelions, you know, it's going to touch our own children, and that keeps me going.
Yeah, amazing. You know, we just got another comment here, and I want to ask you about this because I just had a thought about it. Sarah says, but what sucks about an eating disorder is you don't get clean from it. You have to eat. You need food to live. That's the hard part of this addiction. And Sarah, I feel you, girl, because obviously that's what I dealt with. And you have to face like your thing that you have to do in moderation. It's like you don't do crack in moderation. You don't, I mean, a lot of people then abstain from alcohol for the rest of their lives and can't do it in moderation, or else they'll die. It's a very real thing. Same with, you know, opioids. But at the same time, and I have not struggled with addiction, so this is just me speaking as a normal citizen. Because the more and more that I've been exposed to this field and people like you, Sandy, the more I think about it. And when I think of the advertising that is everywhere for alcohol, beer, vodka, life of the party, like it is so strong. Same as, you know, I live in Europe. Everyone smokes. And if you have given up an addiction to nicotine, or if you've given up smoking weed or smoking some other substance, and you're walking around and literally everyone is smoking all the time, all around you, I imagine that to me feels like, woo, that it's like you can't bar yourself from all of that. And even obviously in the case of secondhand smoke, so you can't help not inhaling some of it as you're, you know, walking through the train station. That I feel like we can I can relate a little bit to people who have to go through their life then having recovered from an addiction, because they face so many of the same triggers that I do as someone who's recovered from an eating disorder. I don't know. What do you think about that? Am I totally off base on that?
No, I mean, that makes very good sense. I mean, from the time our children are born, they're bombarded with messages to use drugs, alcohol, and songs, clothing ads, movies, magazines. Who knows what? They are just bombarded with, enticement to use these things. So, and that of course continues on. They have to continue to face that bombardment after when they're in recovery. So
yeah. And Sarah, I just want to say, like, I feel you and I hear you, and yeah, your struggle and your emotions are totally valid in this case. And it's one of the hardest struggles of recovery is, how do I do moderation? How do I balance my life? It's one of the most difficult things, but it does get easier. It does get easier. It does get better. It can get better. It doesn't always, but it can. With hard work and perseverance, it absolutely can. Let me just scroll up and see if we've got any other. Sarah says, another thing that's hard is all the restaurants are required to have the calories on the menu. I don't calorie count anymore, but I used to, and it was really triggering. Yeah, I agree. That's a horrible idea. We should just tell our restaurants that that's just a horrible idea. Don't do that. And now they all will not do that anymore, right? I wish. So yeah, Melissa says there's no protection from society regarding triggers. Yep, that's right. That's why we have to do so much to develop that internal. And I'm sure, Sandy, for you, I mean, how hard was it to give up some of the things that you were doing in an effort to try to protect your son, but then you realize, like, hey, I have to stop doing this, right? I mean, I'm sure that was really hard.
Well, yeah, it was. And yeah, I mean, there were several times. One time my son wanted to become Facebook friends again. And I was like, oh, I would love to, but I can't open that door again, because I would go right back down this whole stalking thing. So
yeah.
Good
for you, Mama. So wonderful.
We have to have boundaries with our children, and we have to recognize our own boundaries for our own selves as well. So
absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you so much. Just want to, one last thing is that for, obviously we have a lot of parents that are watching, if they're supporting someone who is going through this. Just one little last word of encouragement. Maybe they're in a super dark moment right now. What would you want to say to them, and like maybe to you yourself, maybe 10 years ago?
Well, like the deceptively delicate dandelion, we moms are made to persevere. We may often feel fragile, but we're strong and we're many. And we can change the way addiction is perceived. We have the power. And coming to terms with the fact that we do have power. We do. We are not helpless in this. We just have to move it over a bit and attack it from a different angle. But we do have the power.
Amazing. Sandy, thank you so much. You are a gem, truly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was just honored to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll say bye to Sandy. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.
And that's our show for today. Everyone, thank you so much for your great comments and for sharing your hearts. Truly, your vulnerability is amazing. And as Sandy shared how powerful journaling was, example, for her, sharing those thoughts and getting them out and verbalizing can be so important at whatever stage we are in the recovery journey. So just want to thank you for that. And thank you for all the moms who watched, for seeking out the resources, for being here, for educating yourselves, for encouraging the other moms in the comments. You guys are just rock stars, and I'm so glad. I'm not a mother myself, but I'm grateful and blessed to have been raised by a wonderful mother. And so just want to encourage you as well and say that you're doing all the right things, And if you are supporting someone, to definitely take a look at Sandy's books. Obviously, the website is there in the comments. Consider coming out to the retreat in June if there's something, you know, community is so important in these things, to be around other people who are going through the same thing, who are asking the same questions, who are struggling with the same unknowns and uncertainty as you are. It can be really, really helpful. So just want to encourage you, if you're considering it, to just check out the website and think about it. So with that, I want to say thank you and encourage you wherever you are in the world to be strong. And if you think that this video might be helpful for someone in your life, of course, feel free to share it. It's going to be here on our Facebook page, on our videos tab, as well as posted to our YouTube channel, the Eating Disorder Hope YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube. Click subscribe, and of course, hit the little notifications bell so that you get a notification whenever we upload a new video, which is pretty much every week. So, all right, stay tuned to our social channels to hear about our next episode of Weekly Hope, which is going to be in 2 weeks, I believe. So stay tuned for that schedule. Thank you all so much for joining us. Peace, love, and blessings to all of you wherever you may be. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you again soon.